The chaos may have brought out that need to make a difference. But I think the creation was far bigger than just the need to address the chaos, right? You start with sort of, doing first aid. You start with firefighting. But if you can sort of go beyond that and look for those patterns, look for the message the system is giving you, you can create something magical. And I think if we can allow this for our clients, ability to create something far bigger than just dealing with the crisis. So crisis coaching is not just about coaching people through that crisis, but using that as, I think, a turning point to unleash something far bigger.
Hello, everybody. Good. Thank you for joining us. So we would like to welcome you in today's webinar. And while you're all joining, could you please get onto the chat box and quickly let us know where you're joining in from? Okay. I'm seeing some familiar faces, some new faces. Hi, Anand from Ghana, Matteo from Italy, Bill from Canada, Preeti, welcome. Bhavin, welcome again. Rihanj from wow, Johannesburg. We have quite a global audience today. Ruta from Mumbai, Bangalore. Simi from Gurgaon. Hi, Simi. Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, so while audience are pouring in, Ram, I think we can go ahead and have an introduction of our panelists and our session today. And so what I would do is I would go in the background, and why don't I let the panelists introduce themselves, and then
let me give an introduction to the program today, what we are planning to do. So then I would request each one of them to introduce themselves. Is that okay? Yeah. Hi. Thanks for all of you joining in. Probably it'll take a couple of minutes before more of you arrive on the scene. So one of the things that we wanted to do with programs in future of coaching is to try and offer it as a thematic kind of contribution from a panel rather than my talking to practically an empty wall out there who I can't see, but can't hear as well, except through the chat box. So one of the things that Komal and I talked about and what we wanted to arrive at was, could we find themes for the next few months perhaps, or longer, as long as there is an interest that's happening. So an area that I had been wanting to talk about for quite some time is what I would generally call as a crisis or crisis to creation. It's a kind of hero's journey. Briefly, I was talking to Shreshta when she joined earlier, as well as Komal, that many of you probably are aware that in the Chinese pictograph, the word crisis is usually a combination of two things. One is a problem and the other is a solution or an opportunity. So you start looking at any crisis, a problem, as a gateway to a solution. The simple way to look at death is to life, the hereafter, if you believe, and if you don't, just too bad for you. Or into a black hole moving in, it's a wormhole into another universe or whatever it is. And these crises can either be sort of public, as we have in COVID and climate change and so on and so forth, but there are many of us have a hero's journey of our own. A simple crisis for many people who engage in coaching would be that if I give up a job, which is paying me well, because I really am tremendously committed to becoming a coach. And what's the kind of future I face? What's a crisis? What's a transition? What's going to go on? On the other hand, it could be something else more personal. It could be some kind of a loss. It could be some kind of an illness. It could be multiple other things. So the reason we want to address these is to present any crisis that anybody faces as an opportunity for a recreation, for a reframing, for a rejuvenation, whatever the appropriate word is. And that's what we coaches are for. One of the things recently, some of you may already be fairly engaged with that particular subject and topic, is the climate change organization, which is run by Eve Turner, Peter Hawkins, and a few other people. So they had written a book, and I was asked to do a brief review for that. And one of the things that came up really was, rather than seeing it as some kind of a doomsday scenario, to be able to look at it and say, hey, these are some of the things that we can do. And they can be a spring after the winter, or they can be an autumn after the summer, or whatever it might be. So those are the kind of things that we would like to get into today. So I will briefly let each one of the panelists introduce themselves, and then I would start with some general questions about their own hero's journey. Many of you need no introduction to Vijay. She is the chapter head of ICA Chennai chapter, and she runs Coaches for You and multiple other initiatives. Sunil and Shreshta are new to the panel, probably to you. And I'm told that by Komal that Sunil is not really from the coaching world. So we are going to get a refreshingly different opinion about what other people think about coaches in general. Hopefully, that's not too bad. Shreshta is, I understand, she's ACC credential coach who's working towards her PCC. So I'll let them, so let's start with Sunil and then Shreshta and then finally Vijay. And then briefly, if you could just tell us a little bit about who you are and your hero's journey. And then we would get into the program structure. Sunil, would you like to start? Thanks.
Sure, Ram. Sure, Ram. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. Greetings. Good morning, good evening, basis, whichever location you are at. My name is Sunil Shreshta. I stay in Goa, India. And as a professional, I'm a brand strategist. My role is to actually, understand people, understand culture, look at the larger changes that are happening in society, and kind of trying to make sense of them. And so that is the sort of external journey that I've been kind of involved in past several years. Internally, I'm kind of there's been a journey to understand myself, and there's been a more like a path of meditation and understanding self that I have been on through. So just kind of trying to play between these two sort of aspects of life. And just very briefly, as Ram said, he was mentioning about some global issues which are like global warming and environmental change, and so just to say that sometimes global issues can have deep personal impact, like I had like in my case they had there was a period of 4 or 5 years when I was personally deeply impacted by what was happening around. There was pollution in the city, the whole consumption culture. I was highly disillusioned with the whole sort of the way we were kind of going about our lives, and that then and then pandemic hit, which was kind of a double whammy. Already I was very sensitive and was kind of going through not a very good phase, and then suddenly pandemic hit, and it became there was a sense of vacuum that got created due to pandemic. But after that, after a couple of years of pandemic, there were a few changes to my life that I kind of tried to affect, and I kind of made those changes. And after that, there's been a quite sort of almost like a transformation, if I may, in my life and in my journey, which I will talk about later. I think I'll let Shrestha kind of, introduce herself. Right, Ram, or shall I?
Thanks. Yeah.
Thanks.
Let's go on to Shrestha, please. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you, Sunil. It was good to hear you and to know you. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. I'm Shrestha. Like I mentioned, I'm with ACP credential, but I was not a coach always. So I started my coaching journey a year back. Before that, I was an HR professional for around 10 years working with Indian MNCs. And I decided to take this plunge. Something happened, and what happened was this crisis situation that changed my outlook, my perspective towards life. I happened to meet cancer in 2019, and I'm a stage 3 breast cancer survivor. So, with that, a lot of things changed, my perspective changed about a lot of things. I explored myself more, and I also, so this was one challenge that life offered to me, and it encouraged me to put myself on another challenge, that is to take the career transition for myself from being leaving my going full-fledged HR job to be a coach and speaker to follow my heart and my passion. So now I'm a coach, I'm a performance coach for mid to senior professionals, and I help them overcome their challenges without feeling burnt out, without losing themselves and unleash their performance. So this gives me joy, and I'm parallelly a motivation speaker as well. Again, a life that cancer introduced me to. So this is a little brief about me.
Thanks, Shrestha. Vijay?
Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It's quite a good evening for us here, 9 p.m. in the night, but I'm just feeling very energized to be here in this space. Thank you, Ram, as always, for allowing others to share in your space here. And only you could have come up with such a powerful topic. And the moment I saw it, this one just called out to me. Lovely to hear your introductions, Sunil and Shrestha. And I am just wondering, Ram said hero's journey. I really don't know, how to articulate that or what one specific thing to talk about. But I'd simply like to say that I would say the last decade of my life has been quite chaotic. And and that's the beauty, right? Paradox. I'm smiling talking about it because when you're in the chaos, you don't necessarily feel like smiling. But I think the shift I'm experiencing nowadays is chaos is probably a good default state to be in, and I sort of say, okay, bring it on, because I think there is just so much possibility if you allow it to. For me, I think the shift has been that mindset to say, let's embrace it. And that's where I'd like to leave. In terms of my day job, I'm a full-time coach. I run a coaching practice. Of course, Ram was my mentor in my MCC journey. And I am also a practitioner of the systemic way of being and thinking. And I think it not just shows up in coaching, but I think also the way I am. Over to you, Ram.
Yeah, thanks, Vijay. Couple of things I just want to say before I get others to start sharing. First of all, those of you out in the audience, and many of you may have had experiences which are crises in your lives, which have made you go through situations where, as Sunil said, transformed yourself in some way or another. Please reach out to me or support at Kocharya. And if there is sufficient response, we could continue on this theme. It could be on specific topics of some people who are shifting from job to job, from profession to profession, as Resha did, that she did. And it could be other stuff in terms of what you're going through. But Vijay made a reference to hero's journey. I think what we need to understand, each of us is a hero to ourselves. You don't need to look at some other big hero, and very often it's a Buddha who's quoted as a hero, or a Mandela, or a Gandhi. Every one of us has had some experiences which have been life-changing. It's not possibly become public like other people. And truly, these are heroes' journeys in the sense that there's a calling, there's something that happens, we managed it, we reached a point, we learned something, and we go back in terms of trying to share that back with where we started from. That's really the monomyth of Joseph Campbell in a very, very simple way. And Vijay made a reference to this being the center of chaos. I think very often my own recognition is that when you are in the center of the chaos, that's a calmest space that you can be. I would much rather be in the center of chaos rather than be somewhere out in the fringe where I'm constantly being moved around, buffeted around. And if I'm in the eye of the storm, then I'm probably the safest where I can be. The simplest way to look at the eye of the storm is to say, hey, what's the worst that can happen? There's a deeper shit that I'm in. And so what worse can happen? And if we can look at it from that way, and there are these qualities which people sing and write about, resilience and grit and flow and stuff like that. I'm using the names of some very, very famous books. And then people come and say, hey, you know, fantastic, you must read that book. I said, can you see yourself there? It's very important. Reading a book is, knowledge is garbage unless you reflect on it and you try to relate it to what you've been through. So try and see for yourself how you have applied these concepts of, whether it is like Otto Scharmer so beautifully talks about, the emerging future in terms of moving from the closed mind, closed heart, and the closed will to the open mind, open heart, and the open will. Or somebody else talks about Mikhail, unpronounceable name, on flow, or somebody else on resilience, or somebody else on grit. These are things each one of us can do. And then check for ourselves how we have managed to see, despite the black cloud, the silver lining. Rather than seeing the silver lining, like many other people, we start looking at the black cloud. Okay, what else can go wrong now? 3 times I have had these good things. You know, somebody did me a good deed, I won some money, and I got a credential or whatever it is. Now something is going to go wrong, right? So as coaches, how do we move out of that space, move out into something which makes us see, I'm not saying be an idiotic optimist, but be optimistically realistic and look for that silver lining, outlining a dark cloud, and be able to move towards it with resilience and grit and flow, and hopefully carry people along with you, be they family, be your friend circle, so whatever. So this is really what I would like you to talk about. So this time I'll invite Shrestha first. So Shrestha, talk about whatever you've been through, in whichever way, whatever you want to say, it's totally up to you. Take about maybe 5 to 10 minutes and talk a little bit, and then we can go through each one of them. So that'll take probably the rest of the session. If there's anything coming on the chat box, I'll probably interrupt you and ask you for some additional information, but over to you.
Sure, Ram. So let me start with a quick background of about my family, because my family played a role in the crisis along with me. So I live here in Mumbai with my family. I have a 4.5-year-old son. I live with my in-laws and my husband. And what I'm going to share about is my crisis with cancer. So in 2019, September, I got diagnosed. My son was 2 years old. He just turned 2 at that time. And I was in a state of complete physical fitness. And it came as a shock, that's why, because there was no history of cancer in my family. I was pretty young, physically fit, and leave others. I was myself in shock. But of course, the need of the moment was that I come out of that shock and look into what can be done now. For a moment, when I discovered that each and every test was confirming the presence of cancer cells in my body, I was thinking that when at the end, Do I have a few weeks, few months, or do I have decades to go? And that was the life-changing moment. That was the moment of truth for me because I could see my deathbed, and that is when I realized and I asked myself that have I done enough to be proud of myself if I'm dying tomorrow? The answer that came was no. There was so much that I wanted to do with my aspirations and also to be with my family. I wanted to see my son grow. I wanted to be there with him. I wanted to be with my husband. And those were the moments that kind of helped me get anchored. That gave me the why. That gave me the why I should strive and not give up in my challenge. I should do whatever is possible in my hand to live happily and courageously to whatever time I have. But God probably was on my side, and the treatment, the doctor said that the good part is that your cancer has not spread to other body parts, though it has started to, so we have a higher chance of it being curable. And at that moment, I decided now life has given me a second chance. Maybe with this treatment, I could be out of it. And this time, I am not going to get let my life get wasted. Maybe cancer came as a wake up call for me that you are meant to do a lot. You are supposed to do a lot, and you have been probably not taking care of your life and yourself well. So better do it now. So I saw that first opportunity in my challenge that probably this is a wake up call to revive me, shake me, and tell me that this to show me my deathbed and from there do the backward working that what all I should be doing so that whenever I am dying, I feel proud of myself. So, with that being the starting point, I started doing things that gave me joy and that my heart called for. There were moments, so like I was in shock, I was thinking that people of my age, they are so vulnerable. And when I researched more, I got to know that breast cancer is number one cancer in India. And I was thinking that I didn't know about it. And when I am looking to seek more information about it, there is not a lot of information. People do not talk about it and it's hard to get to know people who are talking positive about it. There are less positive stories and more of negativity and more of sympathy, which is around this disease. And that was bothering me. And at that point, I decided that let me start writing. Though I never wrote in my life earlier, I thought I wanted to vent out. That was the first reason because there was a lot happening with me with surgery and chemotherapy started. I wanted to vent out. I started writing and I thought that no, the story should reach more people. At least in my circle, people would know what happens in the life of a cancer person so that if tomorrow if they meet someone, they would have a positive story to tell and to view that you can be out of it probably. So I started writing and blogging about it. Thankfully, my blog got appreciated a lot. People started finding encouragement with the blog in their own respective challenges as I was sharing the learnings cancer was giving me. And they started garnering global leadership. So that made me realize that sharing the story, being vulnerable, is so powerful and being able to make a difference to others' life, even with or without cancer, that made me feel fulfilled that, okay, I am putting my challenge to a good use. I am putting my life to a good use. Maybe it was this was the opportunity it was meant for. And I also discovered that how good I feel when I am writing. And since then, writing became my part of me. I have been journaling since then. I have been also posting on LinkedIn because just for the joy of it, because I love writing. So it introduced writing to me. That was the first thing. Second was with this, of course, I became an advocate of breast cancer, and there was an HR conference I was about to attend pre-cancer in December, and of course now I could not go. But then I decided to still go and rather use that stage to spread breast cancer awareness. I asked the people over there to give me some few minutes so that I can talk about it, some 15-20 minutes. But because of the time crunch and because of the esteemed speakers that were already there, they could provide me only 5 minutes. And I decided to put those 5 minutes to the best use possible because I am not sure how long do I have and whether or not I have this moment again. I will get this moment again or not. So I went on that stage and shared what I wanted to share. When I came down, the entire house full of the conference hall, full of the CHROs, CXOs, and who's who. They got up and gave me a standing ovation. That became another turning point of my life because in that moment I discovered the speaker in me. And I realized that, okay, so this is what cancer has gifted me. It is making me reveal new potentials of mine that I was never aware of. I discovered the writer, the speaker, and since then, the corporates and the other forums, they started inviting me to encourage the population and the team members they have. So I derived my fulfillment out of it, and it also put me on my own self-healing journey. Because every time I was giving, I was healing myself. So I would say I was doing, and I'm continuing it for all selfish reasons because I can see myself healing every time I give. So I feel grateful to cancer because it helped me, gave me the opportunity to unleash my full potential. And with it, I also explored coaching. Cancer made me get introduced to coaching, and with coaching came the clarity of what I want from my life. It came the confidence that yes, I can do what I want to do in my life. And with that, I got the courage to take the plunge to leave my HR job and to switch to being a coach full time because that is what I wanted to then explore. And then I just got into it and I got myself certified with Coach Arya. I went enrolled into the training program and parallelly I started practicing first with peer coaches and then with the client. So I put myself in the uncomfortable situations and things started shaping up. So what I discovered is in the process of cancer that all the power lies within us and we keep on searching for our answers outside. We keep on searching that things will get better in our life because of some miracle or some magic. But only when I was pushed beyond my boundaries and when I decided that I will do what I wanted to do, life started opening one bud, one leaf at a time. And with that, I could uncover my potential. So only when I change my perspective to look at my challenge as an opportunity with a with no judgment that I didn't know where it will take me. But I was curious that let's see where it takes me. Let me at least start on this. Let me take one step forward. Let me take second step forward. And it only gifted me with great things. So this is what I wanted to share that challenge can also be an opportunity, a crisis can also be an opportunity to create yourself in a new form and also to create more impact for people who might be in a similar situation as yours. And that's what every challenge is, it comes with a purpose. It leaves on us to identify that whether we are able to reach that purpose or not. Once we reach, the life changes. So that's it.
Thanks, Sesha. I would like to come back to you a little later about a couple of things in terms of how being a coach perhaps helped you in some way after others have shared. And also, in what way, now that you are a coach yourself, would you approach a person in a similar circumstance as yours? Because I do know from experience that you're not looking for sympathy. And that's the worst thing that people can give you, or give you some platitudes in terms of, oh, you know, so and so and stuff like that. So maybe some meaningful advice so that people out here who are coaches themselves could have a better handle in terms of working with people who have recovered from illnesses like yours or in similar situations. So I'll get back to you. Thanks. So Vijay, now if you could talk a little bit about yours and then we'll go to Sunil. Yeah, thank you.
Shrestha, I could just so feel your journey and, it just left me so inspiring and more than inspired, I think the positivity, every word which you were saying. And certainly I can imagine how difficult it must have been because that's where I want to start. I lost my dad to cancer a decade ago. And it was a very big turning point in my life. And we lost the battle. So, and today I'm able to say it here in front of, so many people. And I had a fairly good life, till that turning point where I saw more of victories than failures. In fact, I was not used to losses. I'm not trying to say that life was easy or perfect or something, but, I always prided myself on being a fighter. That and very simple sort of simplistic equation, right? You put in the hard work, you do the grind, and the result will come. And that equation was working out for most of my early life, including my early career, and including, say, till about my mid-30s. And that was the first turning point. And I talk about the last decade as being quite chaotic. The story starts there, and I'll start with the personal stuff, and then I'll move on to some other things around me in the more recent years. So my dad, not even 70, running a business, doing very well, professional, self-made man, absolutely never visited a hospital in 40 years, would pay insurance premium every year, never claimed it once, would beat any of us in walking. I'd have to do double steps to catch up with him, at that age, 68. Boom, one day, right? Or we kind of knew something was wrong for about a month. And then boom, one fine day, we were told that, he had a very aggressive form of cancer. And this was a cancer where there was no staging, right? It's not like, it's either acute or not, and it was. And overnight, my world changed. Literally overnight, because my dad was just not my dad, but he was my sort of buddy. And we all have people in our families who we're like carbon copies of. So I was the carbon copy of my dad. So it was hard at different levels, right? So he was my personal accountant. He was my, and had a sheltered life like that, right? I had a plush corporate job. I didn't even know how to file my taxes. Right? I didn't have to. Dad was there to take care of everything. And this is post-marriage, post 2 kids and everything, right? So you can imagine the kind of relationship we had. And of course, and the many things that, lest I give you a feeling that I was a pampered brat, I was not. I kind of did things for him as well. So we had a relationship of equals. So it was not just losing dad. It was not just the shock of that, but just like you, Shrestha, we've never heard of the C word in the family. Nobody, right? Nobody, no benchmarks, nobody to go and speak to, nobody to sort of give you inspiration. It was hard. So I think just the shock of it. And then what happens is your fundamental life beliefs and value systems get changed in that chaos, in that moment of crisis, right? Because I've seen life with this algorithm which says A, B, C, D, and then you get A, B, C, D, right? So here it was, we were doing everything, the research, the study, I sort of deprioritized everything in my life overnight. I pulled out of projects. I wasn't consulting at that point of time. I had a great team who understood. I had 2 toddlers, right? My little one was really little, and everything took a backseat in the belief that if I'd roll up my hands, load up my sleeves and jump right in and do what needed to, I would save him. And I remember, and the way it was, right? There were miraculous things that happened. Doctors were not even expecting to get through 1 stage of chemo, but he actually landed up doing like the last one. And at a point of time when we were considering a transplant, we sort of didn't lose him to the cancer, but, we lost him to infection, which just so randomly happened. So everything was going great, right? And, everything was working out. It's like you're the runner, right? You're in the final 100 meters of the running race. You just that close from the ribbon and throwing your hands up, and then you have a catch in your hamstring and then you collapse and you're like the last guy to win the race. Yeah, so it happened just like that, and then it just didn't make sense. So the belief, the value systems, whatever you've grown up as, just completely turns on its head, and life tells you very different things. So it's not just loss that we deal with, in chaos or in crisis. but it's almost like we lose a part of ourselves and who we have been. And so it made me question many things, right? It made me question science. And I was a firm believer in, scientific thinking all my life. I would pride myself on it, right? Even as a coach, right? I like to know the why. I like to get into depth. Science didn't make sense. And, I was angry, very angry, right? In what way is this fair, right? A man who's never had a bad habit, a man who's never tasted alcohol in his life. I mean, nothing, right? Never had a smoke. Everything was perfect, right? Old way of living. How could this happen? In what way, right? I mean, I know it sounds a little kiddish when I say it like that, but these were the emotions. Then to realize there's something that science cannot answer, right? So imagine somebody who grows up with that temperament and then you have to change everything. So that was a huge turning point. And interestingly, very soon, there was like many challenges. There was another very difficult health situation of a loved one that I had to deal with immediately. So imagine then you're carrying the baggage of this, right, of failure. And so you don't know how to deal with these things, right? So there is no script. So I think the important thing for me in that stage of life was it's okay if you fail once. It's okay if it doesn't make sense. Go with what makes sense. And, so I went back the second time around to very, very sincere caregiving, doing whatever we could, being positive, not we were scared, right? When something like that happens, the next time something happens, you're like really scared. You don't think of winning, you think of losing. And, to conquer that fear. And the thing I realized, the learning for me personally was, do your duty and, whatever needs to happen will happen. It's not a fatalistic attitude. You're still being very active about it. But I think I needed to rediscover myself. So all of those things that were confusing for me, I sort of even lost interest with life, so much so through that phase. My health got affected. I didn't realize that it was carrying a whole lot of stress. And, it was also a personal growth for me because I knew nothing about business. I knew nothing about so managing his business, managing my life, managing so many things. And they don't teach you this in textbooks, right? And there's also this expectation to put on a strong front, which is the worst, because we try to be strong when we're not, we're crumbling inside. So I think these were the big ones. And I wouldn't say there was one answer or one realization, but I think all I want to say about this personal, the brush with chaos and the brush with crisis is that it certainly sort of grows you from the inside out, right? You develop a certain muscle, a certain sense of resilience. You just become stronger. Now, again, the question is it worth it, right? But these are not things that you can gain. And like Ram said, when you're in the eye of the storm, I didn't realize it then, but today probably I will look at it like that. I'm wiser, is that you are in the eye of the storm, and whatever happens can go only upwards. So that's the personal bit. Ram, I'd like to narrate another example, but I can wait and come back if you prefer that.
Yeah. Sunil, if you could.
Sure. So my journey actually is not in the least bit as challenging or as heroic as Shreshta's and Vijaylakshmi's. It's a simple story of a personal change that I would like to narrate. In fact, before that, to Shreshta, there's a friend of mine who's kind of recently been through the similar experience, and she also happens to be in Bombay, and she also happens to kind of convert it into something, and she has just written a book on it. It's called Can Say You Picked the Wrong Girl, and it's exactly the similar kind of story I could see. You know her, you know of her.
I read about this. The
Sure.
article came.
Yeah, so in fact, there's a similarity to both of your names also. She's called Sharmishta, you're called Shreshta. Yeah. So yeah, coming to my simpler sort of life story, it was more like a existential crisis. So 4 or 5 years before the pandemic, I really started reading up on environment, climate change, etc. All the changes that were happening. There was pollution around. Living in Delhi NCR, you can kind of imagine. I have been a very sensitive person. In general, these kind of things have been impacting me, since childhood, but didn't take them seriously. Now, 4-5 years, the more I read about it, the more kind of, serious it started to become. And, I personally kind of, it's almost, I took it upon myself to kind of, to resolve these sort of, larger mega global issues. I stopped using the car. I started going by metro. I would kind of, have a fight at home whenever there was even a toy or a plastic, something came in home, right? And I started to realize that I started to become a bitter person. I would kind of, get irritated. I became more and more sort of, kind of dejected and demotivated, and kind of, with the world. It started to impact my health, my own sort of, mental makeup, to the extent that, I started watching these series like Doomsday Preppers, and what I mean, now it sounds a bit funny, but kind of to that kind of apocalyptic kind of that view I started to develop. And then pandemic happened. It kind of, it created a vacuum in me, and there was a uncertainty from a job point of view. There was a emotional turmoil that I was going through. So then after 8, 9, 10 months of pandemic, I didn't decide to do something about this particular thing, but I decided to kind of change things and kind of do something different. So I just wrapped everything from Delhi and came back to my hometown. And then I decided, what, then I thought about what to do next. Like, where do I go from here? It's a I really didn't know that. I wasn't sure whether I want to go back to a metro city or not. Then I decided two things. One is, what the pandemic taught me is two things. One is saying yes to life. As Ram was mentioning, you keep hearing these things, in theory. In fact, I'm Osho's disciple, and he keeps talking about, saying yes and embracing life. But I hadn't practiced it. So there onwards, I said, let's say yes to life, say yes to everything, be open to change. I was a very reserved person, In fact, I had this, what I was interpreting as a sense of, self-assuredness was maybe, my closeness or my to outside influences. I was fairly content. I wouldn't kind of open up. I wouldn't change. But then I decided, saying yes to everything that comes. And a second thing I learned was, whatever you have to do, you have to do it now. I was a very lazy person, a big procrastinator. I would kind of just keep postponing things, keep postponing decisions, was highly tentative. Then I decided these two principles, that do whatever you have to do it now, and saying yes to everything that comes to your way. Then I decided that, I need to kind of do something. And then I moved to Goa with my family. And, that was one big sort of shift. And the moment I came here, there was certain changes. And this whole idea of, opening yourself to whatever you want to do, whatever comes your way, was kind of transformatory in the sense. So there was the other things started to open up, gradually by and by, because I started to deep dive into, learning new things, exploring new things. I started to explore technology, Web3, crypto, which I had no idea about. Everything was kind of, new to me. I hadn't used Twitter for a decade. I found it really boring. I hadn't invested anywhere, etc. So that happened. But the best was yet to come, which was, really that, when I was a child, I was into art, and I really loved art. But over a period of time, I got into more like a thinking kind of a work profile and strategic sort of, kind of a field that I got into. And that really, my art inclination, my creativity really suppressed. But now here, when I explored this brand new world, Web3, and the idea that it is kind of, absolutely kind of, exploding with creativity. When you see it around, you get inspired. And then I got inspired from that, and I started creating art. I started learning new software, new stuff, things to do, etc. And then I actually created some art and was able to sell it. I would have never imagined that anybody would kind of give any credit to me as an artist. Not that I have become an artist, but just this openness at least allowed me to express myself, and and people were able to kind of place a value on it, literally and metaphorically as well, was such a satisfying and a sort of feeling that then it dawned upon me that it's the label that the world gives you that you need to kind of dismantle and kind of get out of. Because the label that the world has given me was, you are a brand strategist, you have to think in a certain manner, and that's your sort of area of the way you operate. But once you dismantle that, who stops you from being an artist, who stops you being something else? Now I'm planning to in fact launch my own project in that space. So that has been the journey, which a year ago I was bitter, I was disappointed, I was rejected. Now I'm elated, I'm looking forward to the world, I'm looking forward to and second thing, I used to while away a lot of time, I'm just watching stuff, this, that. Now today, last 6-8 months, 24 hours are less. I find 24 hours much less in a day. I want 48 hours in a day. That's what. And I keep, like, now I work at least maybe 20 hours a day. I do my day job, then in the night I do my sort of personal passion projects, etc. So that is kind of I'm really, I would say the last year has really charged me, just because I said those two things, openness to whatever comes, and doing it now. So that would kind of pretty much broadly sum up my journey.
Thanks, Sunil. If instead of looking for 3 gifts from Shahzad Shamain, if you were to just listen to the 3 people here, you would probably get 3 gifts or more. So it's ultimately about what you pick up and what you start applying to yourself. One of the things that I see common in all your cases, as well as my own personal experience in a hero's journey, in stuff like this, when you go through something of suffering in some way, a crisis, the ultimate holy grail that you're really seeking is an acceptance. The deeper the crisis, the deeper the acceptance, and the acceptance comes from an extraordinarily powerful learning. Very often, that learning enables us to disengage ourselves in some way and then work at various things. Like Sunil talked about his own endeavors, and what Shrestha talked about, and Vijay about her dad's. So I would like to shift from there about your personal narratives. I know that, Vijay, you wanted to share another narrative, but rather than that, I would like to look at it differently. I would like to look at it, if at that point in time, when you were at the deepest point of your crisis, like if you look at the Kubler-Ross, one of the best frameworks that I've seen, which starts with, as you all know, denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and finally acceptance. So we are in denial, we are angry, and then we move into other stages. So if you, having gone through this, I know, Sunil, that you're not a coach, but I'll start with you because you're not a coach. If you were to coach somebody else with whatever knowledge you think is coaching, which is about very simply this, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to learn coaching. It's just that you don't give solutions. You allow the other person to find their own solutions. You just ask questions. You don't give answers. So if you were to work with another person as a coach, the kind of stuff that you went through, rediscovered yourself, rediscovered that you are an artist, and you've gone through the crisis, what would you do? What is your advice to coaches? And then I would like to go to Shrestha and finally finish with Vijay. Please, thank you.
Yeah, see, I would say, it's important to understand the personality and person, and work with the personality. I think that comes first, because there are different people respond to things differently, right? So it's one, I think the first thing should be to align with a certain align the whatever the coaching method or technique. I'm not an expert on this at all, but I feel if somebody were to kind of coach me or tell me something, I mean, first that person should understand me, that I have a certain sort of behavior pattern, certain characteristics. I can't suddenly transform. Second, if I were to advise somebody, mm, is this whole openness. I think this idea that this idea that you should remain open to things. I don't know, I'm not very good good at kind of giving advices, but certainly I would say that what worked for me, I can tell others that this idea that you should never ever be content, and never ever try to fit in what others the boxes that others have created for you. See, when I started reflecting upon this, I thought, what is my identity today? What am I? I'm merely a combination of, today in my head, merely a combination of what others think of me. Somebody thinks is this, somebody thinks is that, and I form a sort of a composite of that, and that becomes me. But that's not me, right? The self identity must come from within, right? So this journey, and I'm sure coaches know best how to kind of unravel or kind of unpack this and self-exploratory journey, I would say.
Yeah, thanks, Sunil. I mean, first of all, let me tell you that if you are not the kind of guy who can give good advice, you'll become a damn good coach, because coaching is not about giving advice to anybody, and it's not about knowing either. Your sharing about what happened to you may make you feel good, but your DNA is not the same as other person's DNA. Okay, and each person has to discover in their own way. Like you said, your identity kit is not made by other people, it's made by you, your internal systems, beliefs, and values. And so if you want to look at that identity kit, you need to understand, self-introspect, and be able to do what a good coach is one who just does that. And which is why advice and so on doesn't help. And secondly, I'm saying it, please take it in the context. You don't have to necessarily go through a crisis to be able to coach somebody in a crisis. You need to be able to empathize with that person. You should be able to put yourself in their shoes and their mindsets. So it's observing the verbal and non-verbal cues. It's about empathy. These are the things which are far more important. It's like Vijay would still remember. Our common mentor, Cindy, once had a session with her, and Vijay was coaching her. And Cindy turned around and told her, Vijay, you know what you're doing? I'm deep in a well, wanting to get out. And you're coming to help me. You also get into the well, and we both are stuck in this well. All that I needed you to do was to lend a hand or give me a rope for me to come out. And so when you start advising people, you are also getting into the well. Don't do that. So anyway, this is a primer in coaching. So Vijay can expand on that. Shrestha, if you could, and then we'll finish with Vijay. So that will be the end of the for us. Thank you.
The question being that what would I ask a person who would be in a challenge, and how would I coach them? So one of the first few questions I would ask them is, what did you learn? Is it bringing any learning? Is the challenge bringing any learning for you? And if there is a learning you are getting, what would you want to do with it now, knowing that you have this learning? Because I feel, and I've tried that in with my clients and few people who have been through certain situations, and it has opened, even if it was one learning out of the 100 chaotic things in the life, focusing on that one learning opened a ray of hope that yes, things can be positive, things can be better. And another question, if I have to ask, totally coaching is governed by how the client is taking it forward. What comes as the answer of the previous question, and where are they willing to be going? If there is a chance, I would ask them that if there is a positive, just imagine if there is a positive, only one positive in your entire challenge, what that positive, what that crack of opening or opportunity can be. Because if it has come to you, it has come for a reason. You have been chosen for this crisis. And if you have the opportunity to make the most of it, how would you make the most of it? So, yes, these are the two questions I would open up.
Yeah, whether we like it or not, the famous karma theory, the Vedic theory of karma, is really, it's like this, that suffering is a gift. So it's only when you go through suffering, you really understand who you are and how you can understand other people. So Vijay, I mean, you have this amazing energy, and the last two things, your confluence and your coaches for you and stuff like that. So what is it that, I'm not necessarily talking about just your experience with your dad, but when you said similar situation as a coach, as a master coach, what would be your way of handling it?
Thanks, Ram. You spoke about the karma theory. I want to just refer to chaos theory, right, which I'm sure many of us are familiar with, right? It's simple that, within and underlying the apparent randomness that is there in any chaotic, complex system, right? There's always some interconnectedness, patterns, self-organization, etc. that's there. And I think if we can, develop the sight and the ability to see those patterns, to be able to look for opportunities to self-organize, and to really, see growth through that. I think that's a beautiful way, this title of the webinar, from chaos to creation, right? We are creating something, which is far bigger than any of us or all of us put together. And I think that's where, again, go back to my favorite, which is all about the systemic approach, saying as coaches, if we can enable our clients and even ourselves in that space, right? Because when clients come to us with so much, right, that sometimes can actually be distressing, can be quite shocking, can be difficult to, even reckon and deal with, especially if you've not gone through something like that. I think one of the best things that we can do is to step back and, create that space where clients can slow down and step back. Because when you can step back and do an outside in kind of approach, you see things very differently. And Ram, you touched upon coaches for you. I'll just take a minute and, really tell us at the peak of the pandemic, right? There was a whole community of coaches across, and these were people that one didn't even know. You can't even sort of call them, all of them, etc. But there is a common sentiment of despair, saying, hey, I'm a coach, I should be making a difference, I want to help, right? But not knowing how to help, not knowing what to do. So I think not just as coaches, but even as leaders, if we can sense that systemic need and then be able to bring it together, step back and then come back in, and Ram, as you say, diverge and then converge. I never thought, right? I mean, ask me in early 2020, my plan for 2020 was different. I was planning a holiday, a 2-month holiday abroad, right? And what I landed up starting and what I landed up facilitating, something that has, more meaning to me than any other holiday, right? Coaches for You as a movement came together and, still sort of going very strong. See, the chaos may have brought out that need to make a difference, but I think the creation was far bigger than just the need to address the chaos, right? You start with sort of, doing first aid. You start with firefighting. But if you can sort of go beyond that and look for those patterns, look for the message the system is giving you, you can create something magical. And I think if we can allow this for our clients, ability to create something far bigger than just dealing with the crisis. So crisis coaching is not just about coaching people through that crisis. but using that as, I think, a turning point to unleash something far bigger. And that's really where I would leave this at. I would love to chat with anybody who wants to understand, not just dealing with a personal crisis, but to sort of look at a systemic crisis and own it, sort of, take it as your own and then see how we can navigate. Definitely not an easy journey. And it takes a lot of patience to stick at it. But I think it's possible, and it allows for, I have grown for sure. And I'm saying a huge community of coaches have grown in the process.
Thanks, Vijay. Why don't you just put in your email ID on the chat box so that Coaches for You is an organization that I'm tremendously proud of, and proud of Vijay for having created that. It offers a platform for coaches to come together, coach one another, coach other people. It's an amazing service that she has initiated, and it's I hope it becomes international. I've been always telling her that it just should not remain within the bounds of our country. Another point before I close is, just would like to, one of the things that I have realized over a period of time, and the older I grow, the more dominant it becomes, is that apart from all these other stuff that people talk about, you look for gifts or grit or resilience or whatever, the most powerful support system in any suffering is faith. And I'm not a very religious person. I'm more a spiritual. I don't believe in honest religion. But in spite of it, the metaphors of my own religion give me a tremendous support, whoever it may be, for each one of you. And that, which is probably the reason why, despite all the chaos that it's caused around the world, like Vijay talked about the chaos theory, religion is utter chaos. But within that, there is something that's a value for it to have survived 10,000 years or maybe more. So one might like to look at faith as something, as a supporting system for anyone who's in a crisis. And as I said, any of you who would like to sort of be involved in this kind of a panel, and if there are other subjects that we can discuss in future, please do send me a mail, ram@kocharya.com. In the meantime, Vijay, if you can just put down your email ID, anyone who would like to get in touch with you as far as Coaches for You is concerned, they can. So thank you, guys. Thanks, Sunil. Thanks, Shreshta. Thanks, Vijay, for joining us today. Komal, if you would like to formally close the session and make yourself visible. Thank you.
Thanks, Ram. Can I say something?
Yeah, sure, Sunil,
Perfect.
please.
Yeah. I particularly want to, thank Komal for this, because, again, 1 year back, if she had asked me, or anybody would have asked me for this kind of session, I would have said no, because I've been a very private sort of person, and to open my, see, I keep doing presentations day in and day out. That's my job, but this session has been very different, because I'm, for the first time with such a large group, I'm sharing anything personal. So that's why I was feeling, I'm still kind of feeling nervous, a bit tentative, not, being sort of comprehensive, as you may have seen, but at least, this is a start. This is the first time I've done this kind of session. So really thank you for kind of, inviting me here, and kind of, and allowing me to kind of creating a kind of a space that allowed me to express myself in a more clear manner. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sunil. Keeping in line with your yes.
And thank you, everyone.
Shrestha.
And Ram, please continue these. I think it's a gift for the coaching and the leadership, and I think the community in general, that you create the space for very real, and I think topics we need to talk about, and not too many people are talking about these things. So thank you, Ram, and more power to you.
Thank you.
Totally, I totally resonate with Vijay, and thank you for this topic that you brought in for the Coaches Forum. Because yes, we all as coaches also, we have our own crises, and we have to support others, our clients, the people around us. People look up to us as well. So definitely, this is one topic which was needed to find a solve. So thank you for bringing this conversation up.
Thank you, everybody. And thank you to all the participants who stayed and who continued to share, what's showing up for them. And I would say that we do intend to take this topic much deeper and include other organizations and people who are working in the space and are supporting the communities to help them take out of crisis. So stay with us and keep spreading the word so that we can reach out to more and more people. So thank you, everybody.
Thanks,
Have a
Komal.
good day. Good night.
Good day to all of you.
Good
Whatever
night.
time of the day
Time
it
to
is
get
for
to
you.
bed.
Good night.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye. See you.